I think this week's episode of Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night hit a little too hard and a little too real. I think whether or not you personally went through something similar to Kiwi when you went through school or are currently going through, I guarantee most of us can pull from knowing that one person who we did grow up around with school where, that over extreme personality and that very bubbly or just chaotic energy works really well when you're young. But yeah, once you get into a high school situation, you pretty much almost are guaranteed to be an outcast. And the idea of watching a character who is this VTuber, right? She uses this online persona, and that's how she makes her money, and seemingly wastes every cent she earns on junk food and microtransactions in mobile games. The idea that you have someone who used to be so popular and so dynamic and just this bundle of energy that probably everyone kind of gravitated towards, and when people tried to bully her on the playground, it didn't matter. She was queen of the castle. Seemingly like their first day of like high school, she's just over the top. And she tries to show her passions and what she's interested in, and that's not what typically girls her age were into. And it's interesting because like the thing that's really hard for some people, and I think everyone deals with it at different stages. For me, like around that time period when I was younger, yeah, like I wasn't that great with social interactions. I mean, my part-time job at the time required me to have social interactions, so I was good with that, but with school stuff, yeah, I got it. Not to this degree, but, everyone goes through different stages where it's like, the idea that it's not that she had to fake who she was, but the solution to her problem really was just not being that overly energetic, talking pretty normally, making a friend, and then showing those passions to said friend, and they, even if they weren't interested, would have been like, oh, that's cool, she's interested in it, and she's not constantly yelling in our face. Unfortunately, one bad day and it just all started spiraling into a self-isolating spiral. But luckily by the end of this episode, if you watch after the credits, that has started to be fixed, and she is out and she's no longer hiding as much, and the party's all formed, and I have a really strong feeling of where all four of these characters are going to go by the end of Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night. Of course, I have a full live reaction over on my Patreon. If you want to see my full and good thoughts to this latest episode or any of these episodes, they're going to be over there if you're interested. So, I was slightly wrong about where the fourth member was going to go, because I did know, of course, after last week, our girl was going to make music. But I was under the assumption, just because of the whole VTuber setup, I was like, okay, we're going to have a character who makes art, a character who sings and maybe writes lyrics, a character who writes music and, creates the songs, the instrumentals, and one who would produce it, like take all that, combine it into one. Seemingly, what's actually happening is we do have the artist, we do have the singer, lyric, sure, makes the music and actually puts it together, and then on the VTuber side, kind of like music videos, taking that art, animating it, stuff like that. So it's actually a little more interesting than I was initially thinking, and it's hard to say if I like this episode better than last week or vice versa, but like, if anything, they're at least equal, and I thought last week was just so good with what they were able to accomplish. It's just very interesting because like, you can just get a sense of how alone and isolated she is, even before they start dropping those little, not really bombshells, but those little moments where you're like, okay, I'm starting to see more and more like why she's like this. I think one of the most obvious moments right off the bat is when she logs off. I think it's the first time she logged off. So she's, doing her little stream, this and that, and she's like, okay, I gotta go. And almost immediately after she logs off, her smile goes away. It's just like, it goes from entertainer mode to, that's my life. Like, you could just immediately tell, like, she's not actually happy. And then over the course of the episode, learning that, so Mahiru and her were friends, right? Her and Kiwi. And they went to different schools, and the first day, like, her talking like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna, I think I blew it. Not even knowing what she was going through. If you watch after the credits, she didn't even realize it was her friend at first because she now had pink hair and she never used to have that, right? And just over the course of the episode, really seeing that sense of depression and isolation. And I've said it for a bit, like this kind of feels like if you take a look at like A Place Further Than the Universe, that kind of like how the group came together to go on this like amazing adventure and kind of find themselves in the process. There is a type of vibe that's very similar to something like Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night, but it also has a lot of like interesting subject matter, especially surrounding depression. And I think the way they're handling it is so real and raw and just visceral that it doesn't feel like they're trying to make a joke or a gimmick out of anything. And honestly, just the fact that it's such a real down-to-earth show at the end of the day, and this group Jelly and how they're trying to make something extraordinary together, which in return allows for each of them to grow in different ways. Now, The thing that I think for many of us who've been focusing on like the opening and stuff, the little jelly mascot, looked alive and stuff like that. And I really think what it is what's probably going to happen is it's a twofold. One, we might have like a situation where like sometimes they visualize it in 3D, not that it's actually coming alive, and it could also become a VTuber mascot. Like I could very much see Kiwi turning that into a VTuber mascot that maybe she ends up live streaming and using promotions for her stream to then support Jelly or something, which could be really cool. And I think I would definitely prefer that over it going super crazy, but I'm still, like, I like crazy stuff. I just kind of like how grounded the show feels right now, and just how personal it feels with all these interpersonal relationships and the struggles they're all going through. And I think, in very friend fashion, once you find someone who's, like, you immediately click with, you just become best friends. Like, that's just how it works, especially when you're going through school. I can't remember a single person that I would claim to be a best friend where it took me weeks to really get to know them and be like, oh, I really want... No, it's like, if you click with a person, you just click with a person, and like the next day it's like you've been best friends forever. And that's pretty much what happened with the Central 2 after the first episode, and the way this party's forming with different connections. Of course, we had someone worshiping her as like an idol, and the difference of you're no longer my idol, and coming together by the end of last week's episode. The connection of Mahiru with Kiwi in terms of being, long lost friends in a way because they haven't actually met each other in a hot minute. Just a really good episode, and I think its portrayal of depression hit very hard. And depending on, your own situations, it might hit a little too close to home with how you do feel isolated, how you feel like you can't express yourself without feeling like a weirdo. And it's very interesting how they're able to explain that and show how self-isolation can really become the worst toxin that you can put into your body. Because yeah, nothing wrong with liking your alone time, but when you can barely leave your room and you see kids from your school and you have to run away, and just, it's sad. It's really, really heartbreaking. But luckily with this group Jelly, it seems like they're all going to open up and kind of get out of their shells and produce something, create something truly magical. I'm very impressed with the show. It's definitely should be a crime that so many sleep on it. Honestly, I think if you throw a show like K-On! In today's market, it probably wouldn't even be nearly as popular as it was when it initially aired. Just a different market, it feels like these days, that if it's not truly explosive with like a big twist, like these types of shows do get slept on, which is a shame, but it is what it is. You try your best to talk about the shows you like, but sometimes they just get slept on. But there's a lot of good anime, so I guess I can't really blame people. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode down below. Now that we have the full cast, who's your favorite character? I'm not really sure who I'd pick. Probably Kiwi, but, it could be recency bias. I'll probably need till next week to know for sure, but Kiwi's my pick probably. But let me know yours down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell. And like I mentioned, we got those full live reactions over on my Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we got Roscoe, Zeekster, Refact972, and Michael Latham. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.